this video, I want to discuss the viewports themselves, what controls you have over the viewports, how elements are displayed, what is displayed in the viewport, and also how you navigate rotating, zooming, dollying, panning, and so on in the viewport. First, I'm going to get my select tool once again, and I'm going to bring my perspective view to a full view by hitting my spacebar with my cursor over it, so it is now at a full view. Looking at the view, you'll see several different elements. Obviously, we have a grid, and because we are looking through our perspective camera, remember, each view that's looking down in your scene in any way whatsoever is looking through a camera. So right now, I'm looking through the perspective camera. On the very bottom of my UI, or bottom of this view, I should say, it reads perspective, P-E-R-S-P, for perspective camera. We have our grid, and because we are in our perspective view, we see the grid on an angle. In the upper left corner, you're going to see a bunch of flyouts or menu options that are relevant to this viewport. And underneath it, there are a series of different icons to control many of the same commands that are available from all these different menus. Just below that, we see a bunch of information that has to do with the polygon count of the object or objects inside of our scene. In the lower left corner, you're going to see an axis, and the axis is going to show you the coordination of your X, your Y, and your Z in position in your 3D scene. I'll hit the spacebar once again to go back to the 4-view layout, and you'll notice that every view has the same options I just mentioned. All of them have a grid. We see the grid in each one of them. All of them have their own menu options along the top. Each one of them has their own icons to access different common commands. Each one has the polygon display, the information up in the left corner. Each one of them has a name that tells you what it is. This is the top view right here. Here's our front view. Here's our side view. And each one has the axis that I just talked about in the lower left corner. Notice that Y, which is up and down, is represented by the green. Notice that the Z, which is back and forth away from the camera, is represented by the blue axis, and the X-axis, represented by red, is the across, the left to right. You can tell that by looking at the front view. We can see the X is going in the direction left to right. Also the same when we're looking down on our scene in the top. You can see, again, the blue is going back and forth. In the front view, you can't see, well, you can barely see the blue icon for the Z-axis because it's going away from the camera, which we are looking straight on. These are orthographic views, these three. An orthographic view is a view that is a straight-on view where all objects appear to be projected or on the same plane, unlike a perspective view where depth and distance from the camera will control and affect the way the objects look. But currently, all 4 views are displaying exactly the same information, whether it's the heads-up display, which is the polygon count, the axis, the name of the camera. Each one of them are showing our objects of the scene in a wireframe display right now. It doesn't have to be that way, and that's why each viewport has its own controls and menus to allow you to customize how you want to look at your scene in each individual view. I can come over to the top view, and if I go to the Show menu, you'll see all the different options I have as to what I want to show or not show, or hide, if you will, in this viewport. If I choose not to see polygons, I take the check out of this box. Now I don't see these objects, these primitives that I've created. I didn't delete them. I still see them in my other viewports. They're just not being displayed in this top view. Let me go back and turn that back on. I want to see them. But you can see you have many different options as to what you want to show or hide in the individual view. Down at the bottom of the Show menu, you've got a couple options such as the manipulator, the grid, and the HUD, which stands for Heads-Up Display. If I turn off the grid, this view doesn't have the grid anymore. Let me activate the Move tool just so we see a manipulator in the viewport, and I go back to Show, and I tell this view I don't want to see the manipulator. Now I can't accidentally move this object inside the view because I don't have a manipulator to grab and move around. It's still available in all the other views though. Let me go back to Show, and I'll turn both of those back on. I want the manipulator on, and I also want my grid back on. Now if I come to the Show option and I choose HUD, Heads-Up Display again, turn that off, you'll notice that everything that was displayed is gone. My polygon count up here on the left is gone. The name of the viewport is gone. Even the axis in the lower left corner is gone. That is the option you have on an individual level. Let me show you another thing. So I'm going to come over here, turn that back on. Let's now go up to the display menu along the very top, and you'll see a flyout that reads HeadsUp Display. Now I can come in here and turn on and off or hide and unhide individual elements of the HeadsUp Display, and this will affect all my viewports. So for example, I come down to where it reads poly count, and you'll see the check is indicating it is on or it's not hidden. If I check that, notice that all 4 of my views now are no longer displaying the polygon count in the upper left corner. I'll go back to display option, and again I'll go to the HeadsUp Display. I come down, I'll say view axes. Now all the axes that are displayed in the lower corner, the lower left corner, are now hidden. Let me go back, and I'm going to re-enable or unhide the axis. I want to see the axis in each one of my views, but I'll leave the polygon count off for right now. I don't want to see that. Also, if I wanted to hide all polygon surfaces inside of all the views, I could go back to display, go to the hide or show flyout. You can toggle between showing and hiding different elements, and you can see there's, again, a lot of options that you have in here. But if I go to geometry, hide geometry, and I choose polygon surfaces, all my polygon objects are now hidden in all the viewports. Let me turn that back on, or come back to the show menu and go back to show geometry and say, yes, please show those. I want to see them again. I'm going to quickly go to all my orthographic views and turn off the grid in each one of them. I do not want the grid in these. I want the grid on in my perspective view, but not the 3 orthographic views while I continue to show and discuss the viewports. All right, let's talk about the shading and the way we display our geometry in our viewports. And again, this is on an individual level. So we do it on each viewport itself by using the drop-down menu for shading or these icons, and also hotkeys, which we'll get to in a second. But let's start out with our menu shading. If I expand the shading menu for my perspective viewport, we'll see wireframe, and it's activated. The 4 key is the hotkey. I can choose smooth shade all, and now let me deselect my objects so you can see all 3 of my geometry objects are now shaded in the viewport with a default light that is just the default lighting in the scene. I've not added any lighting, so this is not like specific lighting relevant to what I have created. It's just what's in the scene. When we are in smooth shade all option, we have some add-ons that we can add to it, such as use default material. Now I haven't put any materials or textures on these objects, so this will do nothing right now. If I turn it on, all we see is we lose the lighting, the reflections of the lighting, but we don't see any material because I've not put any on there, okay? That's something we'll look at when we discuss materials and texturing later in another video. Let me turn that off for right now. Another option you do have is wireframe on shading. So if I enable that, now I see my geometry in a shaded view, but I also see the wireframe even though they're not selected. Now if I click and select something, the highlighted green wireframe is there, obviously, but when I deselect it, notice that all 3 pieces of geometry are showing me the shaded with the wireframe on it. Let me turn that off, and let's go back to just the wireframe for a second. You'll notice that a little display icon just popped up there telling me that wireframe was on, and I can hit 5 to go into shaded mode. But let's not get to the hotkeys yet. Let's just slow down. That's actually really handy because it tells you what options you have. But what I want to get to is the icons that are available to do the same thing that we just did using the shading menu. The first icon you see right here, which looks like a wireframe, coincidentally, and it reads wireframe when I bring my cursor over it, means we're in wireframe mode. The next one, smooth shade all. The next one, wireframe unshaded. The next one, textured. And then we also have use all light. And we also have an option called shadows as far as displaying your shadows in the viewport. But I'll just click smooth shade all. And now again, just like I got the option from my menu, I'm now using the smooth shade all option. And as I mentioned, it's just an add-on for smooth shade all. I have the option to turn on the wireframes. You'll notice that both the icons are now activated inside the toolbar. It means they're both on. You can turn that on and off. Now, if I disable Smooth Shade All, we're going to go back to just seeing the wireframe. And you'll notice that the Show Wireframe on Shaded is still activated, but it does nothing different than being in wireframe until you turn on Smooth Shade All. Now, if I activate the textures, as I said, I have no textures, so that's doing nothing right now. And if I enable lighting, we see the whole scene, everything gets black, everything gets dark, because I don't have any lights in the scene yet. So just for demonstration, let me go to my lighting shelf. I'll click on the point light to create a point light. Let me get my move tool, and in my front view, I'll just drag this straight up. Now you can see as I manipulate the light in the perspective view, in fact, let's just do it in a perspective view so you can see it. As I manipulate this, I'm seeing the effect of the lights on my geometry because I have the Use All Lights option enabled. And once again, this is all on a viewport by viewport basis. So maybe my perspective view, I want to see how the lights are interacting with my geometry, but not inside the top, the front, or the side. Let me get my select tool, hit the Q key. All right, let me disable these options, and we'll go back to just our wireframe for now. Now, it's great that we can access all the options from our menus, turning wireframe on and off, and turning shading on, and these icons here, but more likely you're going to use your hotkeys to access these different shading modes in wireframe mode. And those hotkeys are 4 is wireframe, 5 is shaded, 6 is shaded with textures, 7 is use all lights in the scene. So 4, 5, 6, and 7 allow you to toggle between the different shaded options you have in your viewport. So once again, 7 is use all lights, 6 is shaded with texture maps, 5 is going to be shaded, and 4 is going to be wireframe. So depending upon what you're doing while you're working on your game, whether it's modeling or animating or lighting and so on, these are the different shading options you have in your viewport to allow you to view your scene and your objects as you want to, again, depending upon what you're trying to do.